Parks and Recreation Commission. Do you want to take the roll?
Yes. Stacy Ashland. Deidre Cromie.
Here.
Jennifer Hedderly.
Here.
Ed Lowing.
Here.
Abby Knopper.
Here.
Pat Markovich.
Here.
Keith Bechtel. Greg Schmidt.
Okay. So any members of the public may address the commission at any time on items not on the agenda. Or items on the agenda, you need to fill out a card. We do open communications first, which is now. And you can hand your card to Catherine, who's sitting at the end of the table, if you have any comments to make. Our first item of business, approval of draft minutes from May 27th meeting. Do you have any changes or additions to the minutes? I have a couple.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a couple on page 15, line 610. It says Enid Pearson and I believe Emily Renzel was the first to speak that night. That's page 15. And then on page 16, line 637, that's when we changed to Enid Pearson, so replace Emily Renzel with Enid Pearson. Same thing on line 641 and line 645. That's all I have.
Let's see, it's line 526. On page 13, 526, we should be in too much of a hurry to get to steady state, not study stage. Saying that.
Steady state?
Steady state. So just saying that if eventually we don't want to tear it there's no reason to kick them off right now. There's not a rush to get to the final configuration. And then also on 535, it's down. This is a picky, but the municipal code would be 18.40.140 and 18.40.150 instead of dashes. And that's it.
Any other changes or additions to make a comment?
Line 1774, the second sentence, add the word for in front of for each of these individual ones. And then on the line, 2 lines down, line 1776, a period after Ventura Community, and then, so Ventura Community period, and then the word this, got the word this, and then it reads this one is very different. Okay, that's it.
Any other changes or additions to the minutes?
I have some. Page 20, line number 810. It's the sentence that begins, if we're meeting objectives. The correction is cross out we're meeting. So the sentence reads, if objectives, and cross out that. Instead of are, it should say aren't. So if objectives aren't quantified, comma, I'm not sure how we can make that. Next one is on page 42, line 1738. Omit to add, so it would read wanted to be sure to address. Next page, 43, line 1769. The word inaudible should say prioritized. And the last one is on page 58, line 2392. In place of inaudible, it should say we have the meeting if we need one.
Can you repeat that? Which line again?
Line 2392, in place of inaudible sentences, we have the meeting if we need one. And that's it.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I so move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain. Then we'll move on to item number 2, Parks, Trails, Open Space, and Recreation Master Plan. And I think we have MIG here to give us an update.
I guess we're going to sit here. Is that okay? Or how do you
That
want us to
works.
sit? Or we can
Yeah,
sit over
okay.
there, or we can sit there.
At the table's fine.
Over there would be good? Okay. Commissioners, good evening. Peter Jensen, Landscape Architect with the City of Palo Alto. Tonight we have a presentation to give for the Parks Master Plan, Parks, Trails, Open Space, and Recreational Master Plan. We have our consultant with us tonight. We're going to review what's been happening with the master plan so far, discuss and touch on a little bit about the community meetings, and then open it up to the commission to discuss and bring up points that they'd like to see highlighted in the master plan itself. So without further ado, I will let Ryan introduce himself and then take the presentation away.
So my name is Ryan Matau. I'm going to stand up because I'm just more comfortable this way. I can see all of you and everything else. My name is Ryan Matau. I'm a project manager with MIG. And some of you have had a chance to meet me, but we wanted to get a chance to come and really kind of formally roll out this process for you guys from our perspective, because I know that you've been getting updates from staff and you've been updated as we've gotten started on this project, but I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to talk through some things and let you know really where we're at, which is in the first part of this process to really look at the entire system of the park system. We'll talk about in short form because the title of this plan ends up being quite a mouthful, but we really are looking at parks, open space, recreation, and trails across this system, and thinking about the future direction for a community that, we're not going to be making a whole bunch more land, and so we have a certain amount of constraints on us, and really trying to think about how best to use the resources that are available to us. And so the first piece of information I wanted to give you really is a visual diagram of the overall process. So there are a lot of pieces in this puzzle, and we're working to balance out 3 basic areas of product, that is community engagement and analysis over the course of this, the coordination with staff, with other efforts, with other agencies within the city, as well as outside stakeholders, and then really the deliverables, the products that you're going to see along the way. And one of the things I want to emphasize is that we're not going to sit back in a back room and make a bunch of decisions and then bring them out here for you to vet. What we're going to do throughout this process is work with the community and staff and you all kind of in an iterative process to review things as we learn them. We're going to pull together summaries, provide them back out to you and to the community and see, did we get it right? Are we working with good information? And make sure that you all have a chance to say, you missed something, I'd really like you to focus a little bit more over here. so that we're not bringing you a plan at the end of the day that you all aren't comfortable with. We want something that reflects what you all hear in the community, what the community is saying in general, and also something that is really workable, is implementable in this community. So it doesn't make sense for us to stand back and say, well, this would be a good idea without the input of you all, who will have the kind of political overlay, the community's interests at heart. And really that rolls out across something like an 18-month timeline. And this is pretty typical for this size and scope of a project. It's a big investment. It's a big investment for your city. It's a big investment in staff time. It's a big investment in your time, because you've already been focusing on this for a while, building up to this plan, and you're going to continue to have a lot of conversations that relate here. In line with that, I wanted to recognize that you all have been doing work and will continue to do work that will run in parallel with this process. You've been working on what I'm aware of at this point, and part of it is to make sure that I'm not losing anything in the translation, but I know that you've been working on topics around community gardens and around dog parks, and I want to emphasize that that work is great because it allows us to dig in a little bit deeper on those important community topics with your help. And so the processes that you all have started off, the conversations that you all have started off, we're working, Darren's been helping us kind of get aligned with what the kind of level of detail, the scope, and the objectives of those conversations, and how we can just really work them right into this overall planning effort. Looking across this, there's going to be a chunk of work over here on the left that we've been actively working on, starting in the wintertime and into this spring. We've been really getting to know your community, and that's both through a review of the work that you all have done in the past as a community, coming out and touring your park sites, really getting at an understanding of the inventory. I'm going to pass around these. This isn't something we have to focus on a whole lot today. We're not going to review it per se. I just thought that it would be a useful piece of information out of the work that we've been doing so far. And what these are, two pieces. Nice big visuals for you here. In addition to the process, we have what we call basically the base map, the map of the park system, based on your all information kind of vetted across the community, making sure that we understand what is and what isn't inside the park system, and then the inventory, which gives the kind of tabular form of the same information, and a little bit more detail about what's inside of those parks. This is some of the base information that we've been developing to make sure we understand what's going on here. And tonight is really about how we can continue to build that understanding of what's going on here, because it's a whole lot more than just how many parks you have, how many acres you have, how many playgrounds you have. It's a lot more about what you all want to, as a community, be able to do in these parks. And to, I like to say that it's, having a park system is not about having a collection of stuff. It's not about acres of grass. It's not about number of playgrounds, numbers of swing sets, number of ball fields. It's about the range and quality of activities that you can support across this community. And so we really want to understand the desires of this community, the kind of wants and needs, and a big part of that is going to get filtered through you all, because one of the first stops when the community has something that they'd like to say about Parks and Recreation is to come right here. Talk to you all either at a commission meeting or offline, and you kind of get a chance to hear and bring all of these topics together. And so I do have, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about particularly the public outreach section of this, but I wanted to stop the talking on my side for a little bit here, and really what I'm here to do is to start off a conversation with you all. I want to emphasize that it's the start of a conversation. We're going to continue to have this conversation over the course of this planning effort, but I wanted to get a little bit of an idea of what the issues are in this community. What are the things that are important to you as individuals, to you as commissioners, to your community as you hear it across the board? And I don't expect that this is the authoritative answer. It's your answers. But we feel like your answers are going to be very well informed from the position that you all have been taking. And so I'm curious, just kind of kick off a little bit of discussion here about what issues, what topics you would like to see. You would think, if this plan doesn't have this, then we missed something. If it doesn't focus in and give us direction here, we didn't quite get it right. And I want to hear that up front so that we can make sure that the plan that we bring back to you down the road really does address those topics. And I'm curious if anybody has anything that they'd like to throw out on that front.
Well, I'll start out just
Great.
to let you know that this commission agreed on this little handy one-pager
All right.
about what our priorities are.
Overall work plan.
What we'd like to learn more about from this master plan.
Excellent.
In terms of how we're doing, where we're going, and how we should get there.
Okay.
And these are policy issues that have been of ongoing concern for a number of years for the commission. Things like supply and demand issues, dog parks, playing fields, gym space, passive versus active park space, parking, accessibility. And I'll give you this list.
Great, thank you.
Also connectivity, ease of access, safe routes to and from all of our resources, whether they're parks, open space, or recreational services. Balance of habitat and ecosystem protection with recreational uses, facilities condition, I think I got most, balance of services across user groups. And for me personally,
Yeah, thank you.
personally, my primary interest in this process is to understand better what our unmet needs are, both geographically and by user group. Where are we succeeding in meeting the needs of the community, where are we not, and how can we best fill those gaps moving forward?
That's great, and that's, I think that one of the pieces that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail is how we're going to start understanding that both kind of broadly across the community and also fairly specifically, within sub-areas across the community. And I think that it sounds like that's an important one for the geographic spread, as well as we'll want to make sure that we're tracking to see, what groups we feel like might, sort out of this as important in terms of thinking about the second part of your question there is, how are we serving across those groups, however we define them, and making sure
Right.
we get that.
And I think that figuring out how to define them is an important piece, right? It's not just seniors
The
and
groups,
kids
yeah.
and adults. I mean, there are a lot of different cultural
Mhm.
distinctions within the community and other things as well. So
Great,
it's really hard.
great. Well, this is a very helpful list, and one of the things that I can offer as we go forward, since you all have thought about this list pretty seriously, is a little bit of a kind of a crosswalk, a little bit of a map for you of the issues to the kinds of where in this process we're going to address them. Because I think that from you rattling off those things, I'm mentally checking off, okay, I know where that fits, I know where that fits, I know where that fits. I think I've got all of them in my head at the moment, but I think we can give you a pretty good kind of cross-matching of where these issues fit in this process so that you all know a little bit of where you need to kind of, if one of these is particularly important to you, where you need to plug in to make sure that you know which document or which piece of this puzzle, is going to be especially important to you. So that's great. And I'm curious if anybody else has any issues. And I mean, this really can come down to just, this is an issue that's just really close to my heart. It's something that I feel particularly passionate about, and you want to make sure that I understand some nuance of it. We're here to make sure that we get that nuance and we understand those connections. So if there's anything else that anybody wants to add to the kind of overall list that you all have talked about, please.
I was looking at the schools, and most of these schools, if not all of them, have multi-purpose rooms, and I don't think the city uses them right now, but that's not to say they might not use them in the future for smaller classes or summer camps. I'd like to see them on here.
Yeah. And we're definitely already thinking about how to fit schools into that analysis overall, but then and we've had an initial conversation with the school district about the current situation of the kind of shared use of facilities, mostly the outdoor facilities, but I think that, that certainly creates the pattern for greater use of kind of the facilities at large. I think that's a great thought.
I've said a couple of times, in addition to determining gaps in the system, to also highlight what we like in the system and what we want to preserve and move forward preserving. And along with that, what's really important to me is just the preservation of natural areas in the urban parks, as well as obviously the open space preserves.
I think that's a worthwhile point, because not everybody is out using that, and there's nature in all of those places. There's things worth preserving, whether it's for specific community reasons or just to the aesthetics and the value of being near to that nature, as well as the other things that we like to do in parks. So that's great.
One thing I want to add is there's a lag in park facilities. What's out there now is what was popular 20 years ago, because the people making the decisions did those things 20 years ago. What would be very useful is the youth. What are they using? What are other cities successfully using for youth? And how does that compare to what we offer the youth? But should we be changing both the number and the type of things we offer for the youth?
And I think that's one of the messages that we've heard real loud and clear at the staff level. They've heard you on that message and heard the community on that message. It's like, what do we need to refresh? What do we need to kind of bring up to match the needs that are today? It's not just where there's things missing or where there's not a park, but the parks that we have and how are the uses there matching what people want to do. And that's one of the reasons why we really focus on, as I said, the activities that people want to do rather than the stuff that's in the park, because it's really easy to fall into the trap of, well, we have 13 softball fields and we have 45 playgrounds, we're set, right? But no, it's not that. It's what kind of playgrounds, what kind of play experiences do you offer? You're just about to add a really substantial change to the kinds of play experiences that you offer at the Natural Bridge. How does that shift the kind of balance of what you want to do at other sites? I think that there's a lot of questions like that come up when you start digging into that. And we're definitely looking to dig into those questions. I think that's a rich one. Any other, just kind of getting the brainstorm out there for a little bit?
I would just kind of echo your initial comment. There isn't going to be any more land here. Right? So we can't just do a knee-jerk reaction to what this year's crop of survey folks think we need. It's just got to be a long-term plan, because when are we going to do this long-term plan again? And then when we do, we have to take some things down. So I just think that has to drive the whole process.
And I really think that getting this system-wide view, thinking about the, it's not just, I know almost every agency we work with goes through this process. Okay, it's time for a park master plan. Well, now every idea that's been floating around out there comes out of the woodwork and it has to fit into that park, because that's the one that's going to get built next, right? That's the one that's going to get planned for next. And thinking system-wide gives us a chance to step back from that, to think long-term, but also to think about the needs of the system as a whole, and not just overburdening one park with a whole bunch of things. How do we spread these out to match what's needed across the community or across groups, and think about, well, maybe there are some things that aren't going to be terribly popular in one place. That doesn't mean that they should all get shuffled to, place B. Let's think about the good of that whole system and kind of set some goals for that overall pattern that will help guide those decisions. So you're not just keep making those reactionary decisions or trying to cram everything into the next park being designed or whatever. I think there's a variety of places that this system planning outlook, just the process of looking at everything at once, really kind of makes natural. That's not so natural when you're dealing with one topic at a time and one side at a time. Well, great, and I'm like I said, beginning of a conversation, definitely open to other ideas as they surface. We're going to definitely tap into the kind of subgroups and conversations that have been already talking about, like I said, dog parks, community gardens, other topics that have been kind of ongoing. What I wanted to get a quick overview of for you too is the community aspect, the community involvement aspect of this planning process. And so across the top bar here on this process graphic, as we refer to it, there's a variety of different activities that are a combination of the community engagement and analysis. So there's a little bit of us going out to the community and then bringing back, or the staff and then bringing back, kind of digging through that and providing some analysis steps. But there's a few things that are coming up as you look at this transition into the summer of this year, as we just made that transition. There's two big events going on, or two big activities going on right now. One is this week we're launching the project webpage, and an important part of that is an interactive online mapping tool. On here it's called the Mapida Online Survey, Mapida, or however you would like to pronounce it. But what it really is an opportunity to tell this planning process, this planning team, this community, not only what you would like to do, what you would like to see changed, where you see problems, but really focusing in on the where. These questions are geographically based. They're very much, put a pin on the map at this park, even where in this park, and tell us specifically, what is it that you're doing there? What is it that you would like to be doing there? What are the things that are problems at this site or are opportunities at this site? And it's really important that we can get to the where of this, because everybody's answered a survey. Everybody's answered questions about, well, what would you like to see in the park system? But does that mean you'd like to see that everywhere? In every single park, we should have, these 5 things? Generally speaking, communities, and I think this community would be among them, don't really want the same 5 things in every single park. It's really very specific to people, and most people know a limited number of the park sites. And so this is a way that we can really get at that really critical question of where. Which park sites are you talking about? Which sites do you have this specific knowledge about? And it's an online tool. It really is very simple to use, especially for anybody who's ever gotten directions on Google Maps or whatever else. There's very simple drag and drop kinds of tools. It's mobile phone friendly, so feel free to check it out online from wherever you're at. That link will be off of the project webpage here shortly. We'll also be sending it out in a lot of different communications. Basically, everything the city is going to be sending out for the next little while, we're going to try to tag that on there. Have you done this yet? Or would you like to add some thoughts about what's going on in the parks or what could happen in the parks? And another place that we're going to be talking about it is at a series of intercept events. So this is something that we've done really successfully in a lot of these park planning processes, because in most communities these days, we don't get great turnout at the traditional community meeting. You just call everybody, put the word out and say, everybody show up on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. There's only so many people who are going to be able to make it, and what we find is a lot of times it ends up being the same people that you've heard from in a variety of different ways. And so to broaden the reach of this process, we're going to take that planning process, take these questions out to where people are already at. Bringing a series of display boards, big posters on easels out to park sites, out to places in the community where people are gathering, and asking them some key questions. Quick questions that they can answer really easily by just sticking some dots on these boards, having quick conversations with the people who are there. These intercepts are going to be a chance to engage people who've never come to a community meeting, who use the parks but haven't maybe even heard that this planning process is going on. And we use those opportunities not only to get the answers to these 5 or 6 easy questions, but to say, hey, do you want to tell us more? Right now, you can go, use your phone, go to this online survey and tell us more. Tell us more about this specific site. Tell us more about the other parks that you go to. It'll also then kick you back out to the project webpage if you want to learn more, giving them layers of content that they can dig into, lots of opportunities to find out what's going on through this process, what the summaries are of the information we've developed so far. And those two are really critical because they're kind of features of right now. So the first of those intercept events is going to be this Saturday, and we're going to be at Mitchell Park this Saturday, I believe, was the decision. We will get you all a schedule of when all of those are going to happen, because we would love for you guys to come by and to interact with these boards. Definitely put your dots up there, but also to kind of see how this works, because one of the opportunities to expand this even further is that once we develop these materials, we're going to run 4 of these events, clearly, easily through the summer. But once we've developed these materials, we have a how-to guide, we have a real easy kit here. There's the opportunity for staff, for you all as commissioners, for any volunteer to run more of these intercept events. They're quite fun. It's not a big time commitment. You can kind of set up the timing as, if you think, if I went down to my local coffee shop at 10, I could get 100 people to go by, and I could grab them and get this content. We can provide you with the materials to go and display this same kit of information, get that input, feed it back to us really quickly and easily. So we would love for you all. We talked a little bit with Deirdre and Stacy about possibly kind of marshaling a couple or 1 or 2 at least additional intercept events. We'd be happy to do kind of as many of those as we think we have people to do them, because, like I said, once the investment is made in producing the materials, it's really a readily accessible, readily reproducible kind of event. And we learn a lot when we do these, but we also find that our commissioner, volunteer, staff people who go to these events get into a lot of great conversations. They learn a lot of things around the edges of them as well, about what's going on in the community, what kind of needs are out there. And so we're going to be doing a series of those through the summer. This Saturday would be a great time to come out and see how it works, what it's like. We'll get you the schedule of all.
Our schedule says Rinconada this Saturday.
It's Rinconada, that's, sorry.
Mitchell Park is complete.
Mitchell Park,
no, August 8th. Okay,
so you have the general schedule. We'll make sure that
what's the time?
We are, generally we aim for, if we're doing a Saturday, we would aim for kind of like a window between like 10 and 2, 10 and 4, that kind of thing in that realm. But we'll get you the specifics on that to make sure that you know when we'll be there. We've got that schedule. I just don't have it in my head at the moment, and so but generally speaking, through the middle of the day on a Saturday has been the best time for catching that.
Just this Saturday in Mitchell Park, I think, is the first of the Twilight concert series.
Huh?
And right? I'm right,
Yeah,
I think.
At
And there'll be
Mitchell?
like a gazillion people there. So that might, which is not really a number, but but I think that would be a really wonderful opportunity. If you did want to switch it to Mitchell Park this Saturday instead of 10 to 2 at Rinconada, which just might be some soccer.
I think those are every Saturday throughout the summer.
And we had looked at that schedule, and I think that when we were, I think our intention was to catch one of those later in the summer. But
Okay.
the first one might. I mean, I'm
It's the
certainly
US
open to.
Air Force Band or something. It's a really popular one.
Okay.
Right? It's the Marine. It's the military band kind of thing. And it's the first one, so a lot of people will probably show up.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely take a look at that. I don't think that there is anything fixed that would keep us from doing that, but I want to double check that before I say publicly, yes, that's what we're going to do. But the time being, we'll definitely take a look.
We also have this tremendous chili cook-off that takes place in Mitchell Park. It takes place, who knows?
July 4th.
It is on July 4th, okay.
Yeah, and we did look at that event, and and for some obvious reasons, there are some schedule conflicts in that. But it was definitely, I mean, the community event calendar was definitely on our radar, and we were looking at the concert series as well. So we'll look at that. That's the kind of feedback that we want to get from you guys, really. So that's great. And just so you know, the input does not stop there. This is two pieces of a broad, there's a full strategy that really reaches from the beginning of this process right through. And this meeting is one of the pieces of that public input strategy. This public meeting gets a chance for you all to provide input. We have some members of the public here. We're broadcasting. We really want to get the word out about the webpage, the map of the survey, the intercepts. But we're going to continue to meet with folks. In fact, tomorrow we're doing another one of our activities, which is we've gathered together a group of kind of broadly representative stakeholders, really targeting, can't get everybody, so what we target is people who really represent a broad range of interests. So people who can wear multiple hats, who can really represent a lot of different, it might be the, board of a soccer organization, but they're also an avid hiker and cyclist or something along that line, so that we can kind of get a lot of different perspectives without having a room of 50 people or trying to get 50 people into a room. And so the first meeting of that stakeholder group is going to be tomorrow, and that was by invite based on kind of a circular round of trying to identify the people who really could fill that kind of multi-hat role. And so that group is going to meet a few times to kind of review key pieces of this process. Be a sounding board is really their role. And they're not going to make decisions. They're not going to necessarily make a formal recommendation to you all to pass on. It's going to be more, we want them to help us reach out further into the community. So we know that these people are connected. We want to get them passionate about this topic, get them talking to their friends and neighbors, their members, their groups, sending out things through their networks, and really spreading the knowledge about this process that much further. And so they'll also, of course, provide us with feedback, things they've heard, things they think about what's going on, making sure that we understand what issues are floating around out there. A little further into the process in the fall, we're going to be talking about doing a couple of interactive community workshops. And these things are not the typical talking heads, we're going to get up and give you a presentation and then ask if there's any questions kind of a meeting. This is really about creating an environment where there's lots of different ways for people to provide input. Some people like to get up in front of the room and throw out their thing, and we'll have a facilitator there, whether it's myself or one of my colleagues. We're all really, at heart, public involvement specialists. We do parks planning because that's the topic that we love. But what we really want to do is engage this community. And so we'll have make sure that everybody gets a chance that wants to get up and speak. But if you don't want to get up and speak, you want to sit in the back of the room and scribble on a comment card, you want to get involved in a small group discussion, we have a variety of ways for people to get engaged in those community workshop meetings. Those are going to be kind of pinned down schedule-wise a little bit later on, so that they'll be happening in the fall. And then after we've gone through a round of kind of getting that information and really digging through the analysis, we're going to have one final kind of big meeting that is about prioritizations. And this is where kind of the rubber hits the road. We really want to provide information about broad directions and even some specific projects, depending on what surfaces out of the other community input, that this community could go and really understanding some of the trade-offs. If we go one direction, we may have to cut down on how much we spend in another place, and really thinking about the reality of those budgets and the capacities to take on projects. And so we've had really good luck with the kind of public information, public education aspect of those workshops, as well as actually guiding what goes into the plan, because at some point we have to all kind of sort out what we're going to shuffle down. And we're going to do that once with the community as a whole. Anybody who wants to come building our list of interested and involved people throughout this process so that we can get the kind of maximum reach at that point. And then at the after that community meeting, we're going to then work our way through the city boards and commissions. We're going to come back to you and do a similar prioritization exercise. What can we do? What are the trade-offs of what we want to do? Work our way through the other boards and commissions, really building an understanding of what directions are we looking at going, so that when that draft plan drops, when it's kind of out there in the public, communities had a lot of time to kind of chew over this, and think about what choices do we want to make, and what things do we really think are critically important from a lot of different perspectives. And then we're going to work through the timeline and phasing, how we implement these plans. We really want to leave you with a roadmap to the future of this park system, and that makes the best use of a constrained set of resources on a lot of fronts. There's always money constraints, there's land constraints, there's other things, but there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of things that can change, can stay, can be enhanced. And so I think that this system is very exciting. This project is very exciting to us. And we are looking forward to really hearing more about what your community has to say. We have a lot of ideas. We work in a lot of different communities, but every community has a different set of needs. Every community has a different set of priorities, and we really want to, before we start throwing out ideas, we really want to hear what this community wants to do. And so that's kind of the orientation overall to what this planning process is from our perspective. Really appreciate the pre-preparation of the list of topics, the list of issues that we want to make sure that we get covered. Your additions to that we'll make sure we kind of dig into. But at this point, I'm basically, I'm at your mercy. If there's any questions that you guys have about this process, or about any other topics that have come to mind as I've been going through this, or ways or places specifically that you would like a little clarification, I'd be happy to do that now. Or you're welcome to contact us. The central point of contact is definitely Peter and Darren, and a staff team with Greg and Rob are all working with us on, and Elizabeth, are all working with us to kind of keep the information flowing back and forth and around all of these things. So the information that you've been passing along through Darren has been getting to me, and we've been making sure to keep all those things in the loop. But you're always welcome to shoot an idea off. Darren and Peter will share it, and we're at your disposal. We're here to help you kind of extend your capacity through a pretty complicated process. It's a big process. It's a lot of thinking over the next little while. And so, with that, any thoughts or questions at this point?
Ashton?
Yeah, I have one straightforward question on the inventory. It lists, the fields and the restrooms and that kind of thing, but See, does it list whether picnic areas can be reserved? Because there's 3 perks that you can do picnic reservations, and it has a big impact on use if you're planning a birthday party or an ice cream party or whatever. Sometimes you don't want to get out there at 6 in the morning.
So one of the things we are going to look at is the specifics of the reservation policy and the kind of revenues and constraints and how that process works as part of one of our analysis steps that's about the kind of program and revenues piece that we would, in our grouping of things, we would consider that reservation kind of a program of one of the services that you guys as a city provides. So we will definitely be looking at that.
Great, because it's also got an end user usability aspect.
Yes,
yeah.
it has a real benefit and a real, there's a lot of back and forth in that. There's a lot of people who have different opinions about whether having more or less reservable space is a good thing, and we'll definitely be exploring that issue.
And then I have 2 other quick questions. The bike and pedestrian paths, they're not on the inventory and they're not at a specific park, but they connect all throughout. Is that something we're going to
The interlinkages. So yes, one of the steps of analysis that we're just getting rolling on really is a geographic analysis, and that really does. It's almost its entire focus is what's outside of the parks. It's kind of turning the whole process inside out and saying, rather than just looking at what's inside of our boundaries, this is really about how do people get to and from the parks, how far do they have to travel, how far do these parks serve, where are the gaps physically in the system. And one of the things that we look very specifically at in that analysis is those interconnections, whether it be the streets that do or don't have sidewalks, the major streets that might be a little busier for people crossing, the ones that are designated for bike boulevards or for future bike and pedestrian connections. And so all of those things come into play as we dig into that geographic analysis, which you'll be seeing both in a kind of draft form and a little further along.
Great, and my last question was, can you talk a little bit about, I looked at Mapita and there are survey questions there, and like you said, it's all about location-based, but how the questions asked on Mapita versus the questions that would be part of the community survey, how those relate to each other?
Yes, so this, the building of these, in this strategy, in this public involvement strategy, really is we start from a pretty broad base. We want to get our arms thrown wide around a lot of different topics, and Mapita is really about, the easiest way to put it is, I've talked and I've emphasized the where. The other pieces of it are that we're not looking to count. It won't matter if, well, it'll kind of matter, but it won't be the determining factor if 50 people say, well, we should have a sports field here, as opposed to 5 people saying that. What we're really looking for out of Mapita is to get the issues out on the table, to talk about what are the opportunities at this site, what are the the constraints at this site, thinking broadly about that. As we get into the survey later in the process, what the point that we're envisioning to use that survey is really, after we've started narrowing down some of those possibilities, let's use that survey, and it's a little, that one's a little bit more of a statistical test. Let's use those resources to really test a strong question, not ask people, well, what would you like? Because that's, you can get that in a lot of different ways. What we're really going to test is, if we did X versus Y, which would you prefer? Those kinds of tests are much more effective use of that survey tool, and so that's where we're going to. We push that later in the process so that we could develop those choices and really test something that was a little bit more meaningful with that particular tool.
Great, so the Mapita is the high-level
getting things, issue identification, getting things on the table, making sure that we know what's going on out there. Kind of like a conversation like this where we're just bouncing, what are the topics, what are the places that are problematic, what are the places that are great. And there's a lot of those kind of questions. I'll be curious to hear, with that, just because it's been mentioned again, one of the requests that I do want to make in addition to the come out, organize your own Intercept event, is we would really like your help in helping pass along that link for the Mapita survey, particularly. It's a great spot for people to start. If you're going to send one link out during this whole process, that's a great one to send, because it also, at the end of it, has links back to the project page, gets us back to the kind of overall project information. And if we were going to get kind of one thing that everybody in the community was going to do, that would be a great one. I think that it's kind of easy, people can do it on their own time. We like that kind of thing. So I'll make that pitch several times probably in your hearing, but we'd really like you to help pass that along, and wherever you pass it along, to include the message for them to pass it along. It's that snowballing effect that's really going to get us the numbers.
I think that something that you could tap into is with the school district, specifically, individual schools have Yahoo groups, and they use them as a community to do everything from disseminate information about upcoming events to selling things. And if you could tap into those different community Yahoo groups, that's a great way.
Okay.
Like I know I could post that on your behalf for my local school, but that's.
And those are the kind of networks that it's really, we've found that it's really best to try to tap into your guys' expertise, our stakeholder groups and everything else, and ask them, can you post this over here? Because to be honest, it's going to mean more coming from you as a member of that community than it's going to ever mean coming from us as the anonymous consultant, right? So I think that if you're willing to do that, to post things into networks that you're already a member of, that's going to be much more powerful than even the city of Palo Alto sending something out, or certainly than MIG, the unknown, the consultant team that people haven't heard of yet.
Another way to bring that up a level is to go through the PTA council, because they oversee all 17 schools, and they can get it. I'm on that exec board, so it's easy for me to get it out to all the principals, or presidents, and the e-news folks.
Great, great. And so what we're gonna do to facilitate that particularly is to make sure that you all have nice, easy, short messages that you can pass along. So we're gonna send you a message that says, this is what MAP-IT is, this is the link. Can you forward this on to people you think are interested, and then ask them to forward it on to people that they think are interested, or to post it to their organizational networks and to their front page and all of those things, so that it's as simple as possible, but it also provides that little, it's not just the link, it's a little bit of an explanation, this is why it's important, this is what it is.
Will the MAP-IT phase close down and end by fall when the community survey is starting?
Yes, yeah, the MAP-IT piece will, we're gonna set a timeline. We're probably not gonna be real specific at the first launch of what that timeline is, because we want to give a chance to see how results are coming in. But we need to be getting results out of that and processing and analyzing those results as part of our geographic analysis and the kind of what's going on in the community before we can really filter into what that survey is going to be in a final form. Now,
so we might be wrapping it up before the schools are back in session.
Yeah, that's pretty likely, but I know that some of those school communities, like the email groups probably still stay chattery somewhat. No, they go dark. Okay. Well, so we may or may not have luck with that particular one, but I think that's a really good example of the kind of network that we're looking to tap into.
The schools do go back early in Palo Alto, August 14th. 18th.
Okay.
So
that there might be a little run up there. We're probably in a pretty tight. It might be like a final push depending on where we're at. But yeah, it's a good lead for sure. Please.
I just wanted to ask about some of the timelines. So I noticed for the community meetings, you're conducting the 2 workshops the first week of September, or around September 8th. And is that a specific decision to sort of wait until summer's over for
yes,
that?
we're really looking to kind of, the end of summer particularly is very tough, and as school's starting, and we knew about the school start date and trying to get past that point. A lot of communities, September 8th would still be right in the smack of that, but since you guys get started a little earlier, we might have a little better luck, but we also need to get past that holiday week, and so in order to get kind of the best participation, we're kind of aiming right now for that first kind of whole week in September.
And so there are 2 workshops, and so you would probably maybe do one in one end of town and
Yes.
one in the other, I
Yeah,
take
you've
it.
got that dialed in.
And so I think it's really important, since there's only 2 listed here, and then the next ones are a long time afterward. It'd be really good to pick those dates really carefully, speaking about making sure there aren't other conflicting meetings.
Yes.
Also, I don't see on here when you're planning to go before City Council. I know that our liaison, Greg Smith, unfortunately isn't here. I didn't flip the other side. Sorry about that. Okay, so you were going to City Council late September, October?
We were hoping to basically have kind of the processed results of those workshops to come back to the council, kind of wrapping up that big push on the public involvement front, because that's often a topic. We'll be able to bring both that and the results of that analysis. It's a place where we could really get some substantive feedback from them, and so we wanted to kind of time that in there.
Right, that's the trickiest timing because we've heard from our liaison that it's going to be most useful if that occurs by September,
Okay.
given their own deadline with the comprehensive plan work. So I just wanted to put an extra plug in for that to try to aim for September if you can,
Okay.
rather than October.
Well, I think Greg's point was also, you don't have to have a finished product, have it.
No, it's the check-in with them to make sure that they, and the comprehensive plan work, just as a side point as well, we've been communicating and collaborating with the group working on our Palo Alto discussion to make sure we're going to actually do one of these intercept events as kind of a co-branded piece, and we're also trying to make sure to use both ways, use the communication channels to pass people back and forth between those topics as they're interested. So.
Okay, a couple more questions. Can you let us know who the stakeholders are? We've asked to get that information, and I was hoping to know by tonight, especially ahead of the meeting, which I hear takes place tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I see that there's some question over meeting one meeting versus 2 meetings of the stakeholders. Can you explain that a little bit?
I don't have that piece in front of me,
Sure.
but just looking at the, so the stakeholder meetings, okay. So I think that what was happening was in the mix of where we were scheduling these meetings, I think there was some confusion about whether we were talking about meeting 1 or meeting 2 in that kind of time window of like here in the early summer. And so the intention was to build 3 of those stakeholder meetings in at key points in the process. So this is kind of the introductory, let's get the issues out on the table meeting. The second meeting we want to push out to after, again, like the council, after we've gotten some of that big community input push, giving them a chance to bounce off, what does this mean, you know, who do we need to reach that we haven't reached? And then the third one is really about, okay, now we've processed through a lot of this prioritization work. How can we, you know, what's their feedback about, you know, where this is coming out, where this draft plan looks like, so that they can help spread the word about, you know, the public release of that draft plan. And so those are the 3 key points. Now, we're also going to be inviting the stakeholders to be involved in other places along the way, like the community workshop meetings, and making sure that they get invited and also help us spread the word about those things. That's part of the role that we've envisioned for that group.
That sounds really good. And then my last 2 questions are related. I just want to hear a little bit more about how you're going to interact with some other ad hoc committees on our commission that are separate from our master plan talks. And so one of those you spoke with us today were on the community gardens, and that was incredibly helpful to get to speak with you and streamline the kind of information gathering that we're doing.
And how we can flow that into the overall discussion.
So will our ad hoc, so we've done that on our community gardens ad hoc. We did that today, and we will report back on that to the commission probably next month. But we have, of course, we have our dog park ad hoc, and I take it they're in line to meet with you. They had mentioned at our last commission meeting that they might be trying to do that. And then the other one I wanted to just mention was we have an ad hoc committee looking at the extra parkland that we are going to be adding into Foothills Park, which I know in some way will relate to the work you do. It doesn't seem like it's explicitly, I can't see it really listed under your Foothills line item, but I'm sure you're aware of that new park. Are you aware of the new parkland?
The conversation has come up. I don't have the details of that at my fingertips, but the conversation has come up in terms of that possibility. I'm searching my brain. I believe we talked about it when we were out on the park tour around that time, and so we'll definitely be looping back and making sure that we have the current information. I think that the inventory right now, to my understanding, is the kind of the past overall acreage and that kind of thing. It doesn't include anything that's pending at this point.
And I guess what I'm most specifically interested in is in terms of the foothills land addition is at some point that ad hoc committee will be organizing a public outreach meeting, which I think will be very, very important. And they reported to us, I believe, in our last commission meeting. Darren is part of this as well, plus 2 of our commissioners. And they are going to be engaging stakeholders and the public. It just seems to me that it does feed into this bigger picture idea of what you're leading.
And it's a good example of how do we feed in these other efforts, kind of a case study of how do we figure out how to make sure that we're not, at worst, asking the same questions of 2 different groups at the same time, or duplicating efforts, but also just making sure that information flows together. And so our intention overall is to make sure that we're definitely keeping the open channels of communication between what's going on in those individual committees and the overall process, and trying to identify, like we were talking about, where there are places where we could expect information to be kind of flowing in. There are a couple of points in this process where we had identified that we would be kind of breaking down and specifically working with the ad hoc groups that were identified around this planning process. And I think that that's really the extent to which we're scoped to be at a meeting to kind of engage back and forth. But that said, we've also got connections with this committee. We're really happy to make some things happen that are around the edges of those other meetings. Much like we did today, we kind of had a meeting about the public outreach pieces that were part of this planning effort. We had an opportunity to just quickly check in about the community garden group overall. We really want to be able to provide that value as much as we can. Right now, we're open to that conversation. It's kind of more how we, how those pieces start coming in. Is probably the biggest question, right? For all of you who are involved, and I know that pretty much all of you have one role or another assigned in one of these ad hoc groups. What we would be looking for is really, what pieces do we think would be coming in? I would say that the key points of kind of timeline integration are really looking at this fall, looking at that September timeline, when we're going to be pulling together a big package of kind of what all we've found to bring back to you, to bring back to the stakeholder group, to bring back to the council. And that would be a point where, kind of the information, a little ahead of that, preferably, with the information coming out, any information coming out of your groups would be really helpful, but that's not really the last point either. And the other thing that I want to acknowledge here is that your work is ongoing. Our work is over a period of time and it will end. But the reality of these planning documents is that we want them to be kind of the working document that you all are taking, that you all have here as a reference, that you're using as the guiding path, that when a question comes up, it'll have some guidance about whether it's a specific topic or how you would go about setting a new policy or those kinds of things. And so we want those conversations to be rolled in, even if it's a recommendation that says, continue to explore this particular topic. We want to make sure that those things get carried forward, because you all, we hand this over at some point, and you all are the ones that are going to carry that ball. Once we kind of set you up with a path, and send you forward, some of those things are still going to be ongoing. And so we want to make sure that the plan has the support for how those discussions continue. And I think that's probably about the best answer I can give you right now, but I am definitely open to conversations about, if there's specific insight that you would like to get. Darren's been great about forwarding on, whether it's a specific idea or, kind of getting me up to speed on what's going on with the community garden and the dog park discussions so far. Happy to kind of feed that into the conversation, and definitely excited about the possibility of any kind of detailed information you guys are able to get about, where you think, what might work in this community. I think you're going to have a lot of insight into those kind of things. We would love to feed that in so that we can, evaluate that alongside some of the other recommendations that are going into this plan. And really that timing is going to be, as we start getting into fall, we're going to want to kind of pull that stuff together in its current form.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer. I appreciate that. And I think that what I'm hearing from that is that it's really September is a really important month, because any of that extra data that comes from our commission ad hocs, it's more powerful and will be seen better if it's integrated into your presentation to City Council.
I agree, and then as we move forward into the plan, and I think that is right. I think that those topics that are important enough for you guys to be working on them are probably, they're probably all going to be represented at some level or another in the overall planning efforts.
So it does say the first stakeholder meeting is tomorrow,
Yes,
and when and where is that?
we are having that meeting over at
6:30, Public Community Center in room H1.
Just real quick, Darren corrected me, the U.S. Air Force Band is in Rinconada
Okay.
at 7:30 p.m. this Saturday.
Okay, so it would be more a timing issue than a location issue. So
Correct, you're right location.
Okay. Okay, so we'll see about what our time availability is to shift. What we've had really good luck with is actually being there in the run-up to those, because of course during the concert, nobody wants to pay attention to your questions, and it's starting to get dark and everything else, but we've had good luck with like just before a movie in the park, just before, those kind of things as people are kind of milling about, getting their spots, settling in, that kind of thing. So that's a great tip.
I have one question about the survey. One thing that concerns me is the sampling error. If we go to all of the same type of spots, we'll get the same type of answers. It'd be useful to see some guidance from you of different places with a variety of demographics.
So the survey efforts, so in the front end efforts, we really are using kind of a snowballing, non-random kind of methodology. But again, it's very much about getting the issues on the table, and to us, it doesn't matter so much how we reach people as much as we want to push it as far and as wide as we can on that effort. So that's part A. Part B, the community survey piece, we are going to send that out citywide. It's going to be distributed. My understanding, our intention was to distribute it to every homeowner or every property owner. I believe we were talking about utility billings as a possibility, I think, and we were looking at other ways to get that essentially out as broad as possible, and then probably do some post-processing sampling essentially out of the responses that we get. So we'd use some quotas to essentially try to randomly represent the population. We would, in that case, because of that particular methodology and the details we're still playing out based on the opportunities we get, what we'd probably do is we would have, because we're going to send it out to essentially everyone that is a homeowner, taxpayer, resident, utility payer, whatever the ultimate list ends up being, what we would probably do is show both sets of results. We'd show the everyone result, and then we would show a post-sampled stratified result, essentially, that gives us an approximation of a random sample. So it's there are methods to kind of manage down the reliability of that, so that we can get to a good place, really as accurate as we would be able to get with a random phone survey or something along that line. Every methodology has its challenges, and I can go into that for a long time. It's one of the areas that I spend a lot of time thinking about here, but basically the answer is what we would be trying to do is get it out to everyone and then do a sampling from within those responses.
Okay, so the intercept events are not meant to be statistically...
No. Really, that's what we want to use those resources, that survey resource, when we have a question that needs statistics, that needs to have that, okay, we really think the community wants to go this way versus that way, as opposed to what are your big ideas.
We did touch a little bit today on the intercept group too, because the materials that are made, a lot of the answers deal with putting stickers on boards, and one of the boards particularly put a sticker on where you live or what park you like, and through the first three, that'll give us a good idea of where people who are answering those questions are from, and then we can look at those other intercept groups at the end and say, this part of town over here, you can see from the map that there's not a lot of information being generated, and then we can focus in on doing an intercept group in that area.
And what about ages? Are you going to have a sticker for age too?
We don't do a sticker for ages. We encourage all ages, but we do have at those events, we have just a really brief, like the 6 demographic questions that we would want to ask people. We ask people to fill those out at intercept events. we aren't going to like force them to. So it's a little bit, we don't get a real high participation in the demographic piece of that, but it gives us an idea. We also use who were there to get a sense of, okay, we really weren't getting any kids, or we got a great representation of the community out there today. You know, it was like there were old people, young people, you know, people of all colors, and we were really seeing a broad spectrum. And so we get some qualitative ideas of that, and then we also use those demographic cards throughout the process. So like at the community workshop, we would ask people to fill those out. So that, again, we get those check-in points to see, are there places that we're missing in the community, whether it be a demographic group, an area of the city. We found with the intercepts, there's real limited time frame that you can expect people to kind of maximize the number of results. You kind of can only grab people for like 5 minutes. And so you got to keep the questions really quick. And we found ultimately that the age question wasn't as useful as the where people are from, you know, and where they go to play. So.
Okay, just a quick tag team on survey methodology.
Yep.
I know this was just a sample that you included because it was asking about Sonoma. That's why.
Oh, you know what happened?
The reason I knew it was a sample.
Yeah, well, it was actually, it was a glitch in our layout file. It was an extra question that wasn't meant to be part of the overall group of the questions, but I do apologize about that. It's an embarrassing mistake.
But my question is, on one of these, for example, you say, this is top priority improvements. You list a bunch of them and then you say, or do you want something new and completely different?
And what does that mean?
Well, no. That means that's other. Or someone can put in something that you haven't thought about to ask. And my question is, do you include that in all of these? Because it's not listed that way, and you're kind of forcing them into things, and if we're missing something entirely because it's bocce ball, that they really want, which we found out, you're kind of forcing them into something as opposed to having another category for kind of right in balance.
So there's two parts to that answer. One is, yes, that question is actually, that's a Palo Alto specific question for a variety of reasons. I mean, we actually talked about it here a little bit today, is that we've got a park system that's maybe geared for the park user of 20 years ago. And what we don't want to do is assume that the uses, even the uses that we have, or even the uses that we can think of right now are going to be fully inclusive of the possibilities. And so we kind of intentionally added that to that question, responding to that input that we'd heard early on. We do not generally put an other option on these boards for pretty much for logistical reasons, because it's very difficult to track what people have said, and I don't want to ask people a question really directly like this that I can't accurately report back what we heard. We've done in the past, we've had things where we've had sticky notes, we've had comment cards. Tying it to a specific question has been really difficult, but the second part of the answer to that question is, the great thing about these intercepts is there are also staff or volunteers on site talking to these people as they're going, and when people get into that situation where they want that other answer, they ask about it, they talk about it, and we collect up that information from the staff that are using it. You know, okay, so what other conversations did you have? What other things did you hear coming up? Again, this is really more about getting the ideas out on the table, starting to filter the topics that are most important. We force people into choices even if they're a little tough, because if we give them enough dots to put as many dots as they want to on there, or if we give them an inexhaustible answer like other, we don't get as clear a result about some of the questions that we're specifically asking about. And so it's a balance of there's an inherent frustration in a question that forces you to choose, but there's also a lot of usefulness in the result, because the out of these choices, which are the ones that are most important to you, and then we also have other methods that give them an opportunity. Now, the survey is a good one in parallel with this, because there's a lot of other options in that online survey, because it's very trackable, it's very specific about what question that relates to, how we can use that information, and so we're collecting different pieces of that in different places, I guess.
It's a little bit the reverse methodology of what we used on the golf course surveys, where they're putting up dots. Where we basically said, what do you not like about the golf course and what do you like about the golf course? So we let, democracy rule. The geese lost big time. They got a lot of dots, right? And we could have probably predicted that, but there were some other things, there were a nuance to some of the things that they put up there. So
some of the variety of kind of the other responses that people would come up with. And I'll tell you that we do, when we do these, when we have other options in formats that we can more easily track to those results, we get a lot of great ideas. And I will guarantee you that when we get down to the survey part of it down the road, we will also have kind of, you know, open-ended comment fields that people can add things into. And those are always really rich for mining for just ideas about, you know, the things that people have thought of that, you know, I think about this stuff all day, every day, and I'm not going to come up with some of the ideas that have come out of these communities that are just specific to that person or that place, and they are great. And as much as I would love to collect them from these kind of random intercept people, it really just, the cost benefit hasn't played out for us. I'm not going to say it will never play out for us, but it hasn't played out for us in terms of tracking those responses and making sure that we get all that information kind of traceable to the right question and understanding what they mean with, you know, one word on a Post-it note that may have fallen off the board, or a comment card that's not really tied to a specific question. It's been hard to kind of get useful information out of those other choices in that format.
Just a time check, we're 1 hour into this stuff.
Yes.
Another small point, just as far as the citywide survey, I just wanted to encourage you to do maybe a small focus group to figure out how to best mail that out, because my word of warning is that if it goes into the utility bill, a lot of people don't open that, because many of us in Palo Alto have automatic payment plans for our utilities, so many of us don't really open up that particular bill. So that's just a word of warning. You can do a small focus group to figure that out.
Were we planning to put it in the bill or just use the same addresses?
Well, we're working that out. I mean, it kind of depends on, it could just be the address list. There's a variety of ways that we can distribute this, because the ultimate place to fill it out is going to be online primarily. And so that there's a variety of ways that we can get people informed about it and still essentially contain the responses so that we are, you know, able to track those. And so there's a couple of just kind of logistical pieces that we're still working out in terms of what we can do with the lists that we start with the system that we're working with, and kind of working back and forth there to get the best result.
I have a couple quick questions. I think you already told us this, but I can't remember. Is the web page up and running now? Is it live or not quite?
Not quite. So it will be this week.
And will you, through staff, send us the link to that?
Yes.
Also, is Mapita up and running now? We do have the link, but can we share it?
Mapita is up and running, and yes, you can share it. Okay. It is collecting results, and the only thing on it that is not currently functioning is that it currently has a link to the city's project webpage that is not yet live, which if you all were interested in distributing it this week while we're still sorting that last bit out, we can wait to, you know, I can remove that link for the time being, and we can move with that, and then just as soon as the site's back up, it's easy to just drop it back in. It's a simple thing, but yeah, we were hoping that we had that website kind of in sync, and we're almost there, but the map of the thing got ready just a little bit ahead of it, and so we've kind of been sharing that to let you guys know that it's out there.
Can you also put a link to the Mapita link on the city, on the Community Services Department website, and the Parks and Open Space website, and the city website, so people
getting it out there as much, getting the visibility as high as possible.
I'd like to get that link too.
What's that?
The Mapita link.
It was emailed right after last month's meeting, so it may be in your email, but I can forward it to you.
Thank you.
Okay, the other thing I saw, you have a possible intercept event at an Palo Alto meeting. Yeah,
we're going to share one of those, and there's some conversation about whether we're going to do another special one, like at one of the plazas downtown, that's both of us together, or if they're going to bring some materials along to one of the same locations that we've already scheduled, and then we're going to leave that. We might leave that fourth one up in the air, like Peter said, to catch an area that we haven't gotten as many responses from, or especially special event that we could, you know, that we can identify in the course of it. So
there, as I understand it, the Palo Alto events, there are a lot of different kinds. So I went to one that was talking about, that had some panel speakers thinking about innovative vision for the future. It wasn't really a collect feedback from the community meeting. So the collect feedback meeting might be tonight, right now. If it's not, then that would be the more useful one
Yep,
to
okay.
participate.
That's great. And we have been in touch with them. I'm not the person who's been doing that. My colleague that's leading the charge on the outreach side will be, has been working with them on when exactly we want to kind of do that joint session.
Okay, and should we look to staff then for the final times and locations for
Yes,
events?
and we'll get those to you in the next day or two, because that's, I mean, it is set, it's just not, we haven't gotten it pushed out yet, so.
Okay, thanks.
The only thing I wanted to add is, you mentioned that we have the Intercept events, and that if we want to go down to the coffee shop or go other places and do our own, we can add that in. It'd be very useful if you give some guidance of other possibilities, whether it be supermarkets or like Moonlight Run.
Sure.
Other events that you think would complement the existing Intercept events.
I think that the general guidance, and I will make sure that this is in with the guide about how you would do it, so, and that gives you a good idea of how much you're getting in for, you know, if you're going to volunteer for one of these, we have a guide that kind of walks you through the process, but the general advice would be things where people are staying in one place. Runs are not a great opportunity because people are either gathering to do something, running, or getting out of Dodge, basically. And so the gathering for concerts are a good one. Places where lots of people pass through but have a little bit of time to linger. Farmers markets have always been great. The kind of pre-event for events in the park where people come in early and maybe they're listening to music while they're waiting for the movie to start, or they're, you know, just hanging out in the park to get a spot for the concert. The other ones are just days or events that catch a lot of people. So sometimes it's Saturday morning soccer. It's like in the changeover between, you know, between the major game time. You can catch people, and people have different ideas about that, and we've had good luck at a pretty wide range of different types of events. But basically what you're going to be doing is grabbing people and trying to grab 5 minutes of their time. And so you got to think about where people are going to be in a rush, where people are going to be a little more leisurely. And so that's the general guidance, and otherwise we are definitely in for your creativity on it. I think that coffee shops, we've had good luck at grocery stores as a front. You know, it's very visible. We're very, you know, the boards are good looking. They're, you know, they're highly kind of visually attractive. So we try to get the that value in there, and so hopefully that'll spark some ideas for you guys.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you for the time. I really appreciate the chance to talk through it, and we'll be back to talk to you again before too long.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So that brings us to agenda business item number 3, Bowden Park Improvement Project. And I'll remind the public if anyone has comments on any agenda items, we need to get a card up to
There's a screen there. Peter, do you want to bring the screen down to the top?
We don't be on.
I think we'll just go, we have the boards for this one, so I think we'll do this one, or we can do King Plaza as the projection, but the projector is kind of a loud instrument.
Not the writing.
Well, not the writing, but I'll explain the writing as we go along.
This is the same as we have in the packet, right?
Yes, it's the same stuff that's in actually the packet as well. And there's a lot of writing on it, but I'll explain basically what's happening.
And this is a discussion item.
This is a discussion item. Commissioners, good evening again. Peter Jensen, landscape architect for the city of Palo Alto. This is a presentation about a Bowden Park. It's a capital improvement project. Very similar to the projects that we embarked on in the past with the Eleanor Party Park, with the Ventura Community Center. It really focuses on basically maintenance and upkeep of items that are there. In particular, this project focuses mostly on the playground and the renovation of the playground, but we'll go around it because there are little things in the park itself that are also included as part of the overall renovation. So the capital improvement project for this, we have a $332,000 basically to spend on improvements to Bowden Park. Like I said, the majority of the funds for the park itself is the improvement of the playground, and it's focusing on basically new equipment there. The equipment in the playground is approximately 18 to 20 years old. As we've discussed sort of in the past before, that lifespan for playground equipment ranges between 15 and 20 years, so it's meant basically its life. So we're going to be focusing on redoing the playground equipment there. As a means of making the renovation of the playground more economical, we are proposing to basically leave the structural posts there. This is very similar to what we did at Ventura, and basically then cladding on new material to that. It's much more economical to do that instead of basically tearing out all the footings of the posts that are there and rebuilding an entirely new structure. So we worked close with the playground equipment company that supplied the equipment before, so they actually have still the old plans of what's there. So hey, it's very easy for them to do is to basically look at these things and basically put back in really like terms the items that were attached to it. So the slides, the activity panels, the canopies, all those things would be very similar to what is there. So that does take up the majority of the area, and you can see in this plan that the playground for Bowden Park does take up a substantial piece or corner of the park, and it does again take up a substantial part of the budget to replace the equipment there.
And also probably the heaviest used part of that park is the playground.
Right, exactly. So most of the work is basically going to take place there. It deals with a renovation of which was at one time an old play pool that was there that was renovated of some sort and became a piece of playground equipment. So we're going to be basically replacing that equipment. Currently now that area has rubberized surfacing. We'll be redoing the rubberized surfacing there as its lifespan basically. The majority of the rest of the surfacing, because that does play a big role in the cost of the playground renovations, is proposed to be the wood accessible play mulch. Basically, it's currently in that location there now with using strategically locations of the rubber material to gain access to make those pieces of equipment ADA accessible per code.
Where are you putting the wood mulch? I'm sorry.
They're sitting in basically these brown areas right here is where the mulch is going to be.
Okay, I thought that was going to be all rubberized. So
No,
that's
actually-
replacing the sand.
Right. So the other item that is in here that was really kind of the spark of the project to go forward was there's currently an existing retaining wall that's located in the playground at this point. It's actually being pushed over by one of the existing trees there. So we're going to basically resolve that issue. And how we're going to do that is we're actually going to leave the existing retaining wall in place so it can basically keep acting as the root barrier, and then we're going to build basically another wall in front of that that then will maintain the wall and not be pushed over how the other one is going on right now. With that work though, currently there's a ramp that enters from kind of this picnic area that gets you into the playground. There's multiple entry points into the playground here. We are actually going to eliminate that ramp from that location and basically close it off with the new portion of the wall there. Again, to maintain the tree, that the particular tree itself with podocarpus is not the biggest fan of its root being cut. That was one of the ideas of leaving the wall existing there. If we took the wall away, it would probably have definitely an adverse effect on that tree and it might lose the tree, and it is a fairly good size. So this will also help us increase our landscape area over there by eliminating the ramp, and we give it the root system just a more place to grow and to be healthy. So we are proposing basically doing that aspect. In the play area as well, we're also proposing a few more tables in that area, new drinking fountain, new trash receptacle, so side amenities, as we usually do for most improvement projects, replacing those things. As well as the playground here is a very extensive wood fence around. the entire playground area. Some areas are not in the best shape and could fall down, basically, so we're going to go in and basically repair and retrofit the existing wood fence, not replace the entire thing, but really focus on the areas of the fence that need to be upgraded to maintain it in that location. Other improvements to the park itself is to work on the decomposed granite pathways. If you walked around the park, it does have a very extensive decomposed granite pathway system that works itself around. The decomposed granite has lost some of its edger in some places, or just the surfacing itself has become uneven or very thin. So that'll be something that we will focus on. There's some minor irrigation repair that we'd like to do there, splitting up some zones so we have a more control of the areas that are in the sun and the areas that are in the shade. Right now, it's some zones are just one valve in one big area, even though some parts of the shade and some in the sun make it a lot more efficient that way. We are also proposing to add more street trees to the street frontage out there. It's a tough area when you start to talk about sustainability. Right now, it's basically a large section of grass that has some large sculptures in it and a few trees, but it's pretty much just an open turf area. That turf area is not particularly used for any type of picnicking or athletic. So what we would like to do is transition over time and eliminate the turf in that area. And how we would like to do that is basically plant native trees in that location, allow them to become large enough where they start to physically shade out the grass and take out the grass themselves, and then eventually come in, remove the grass, and mulch the area. So for now, it's basically going to stay the grass as it is. We'd like to plant the trees now. In 10 to 15 years, as the trees get to a mature size, then that would be the time then we would then look at then removing the grass. And hopefully the trees themselves will help to do that by the dense shade that's going on there.
And the watering of the lawn won't affect the trees?
The watering of the lawn, no, it won't. It will help to establish them, basically, so we can leave that irrigation in place in there. We'd also like to expand the bike rack parking area. We have currently bike racks set up along the, this is the tunnel that basically connects over to CalLab. This bike rack is heavily used, I think, by commuters basically using the train because there's not a lot of bike rack parking on the other side as well. This really gets heavy use, and there's a lot of bike rack parking there during the day. There is already an area that's a decomposed granite space that basically has nothing in it. So we're just going to use this open space to add more bike racks to so we can increase that bike parking there, which I think will definitely help out as far as the commuter traffic goes and the storage of their bike and equipment. This playground was designed by Royston, like Mitchell Park was, the RHAA, the Landscape Architecture Group. So it does have some historical significance in the way that it is a design. We're going to basically maintain the structure and form of that original design and basically add and do maintenance to it so we can maintain the existing and what is out there. So I'll ask the other step then to be would be to go over the plan tonight, and then in the future we'll come back with a park improvement ordinance, basically when we finalize the full set of plans. So I'll take questions.
I like the fact that you're keeping the wood fence and that you're trying to keep it as close to it as possible, because right now, I know it's just the industry standard to have the same play structures and the same parks, and it gets boring. At least they're losing their individuality. I'm going to make a push for keep the sand, don't put that mulch in there, because, you know, have kids run through there barefoot and you'll see there's a difference, it really is. And the thing about the grass, I know that it's illegal, but they run their dogs off leash there. And it's probably, I'd rather have them running them there than at Jordan. So I'm not in favor of replacing that grass with mulched under trees.
Well, we are, and that's when we talk about the grass, I'm talking about that area out there. The main portion of the grass on down the center spine will remain as a turf area.
Okay.
So there would definitely
I'm okay with
still remain a large piece of grass there.
that. Every can.
Just getting at some of those issues, how much community outreach was there to talk about that transition of turf to trees?
We had a community meeting, actually it was in the park. It was a few weeks ago. The turnout was not very good. So actually we sent out 1,800 postcards to the surrounding community, and 5 community members showed up interspersely to the meeting.
It was the same night as the Palo graduation, that's why.
Well, you know, I don't know if all 1,800 postcards went to those that had graduated.
No,
I would
but I
hope
think
that
there
we
was a
got
lot of
some
people
more.
that were just, you know, they're, it's just, that's a bad week to hold a meeting, because you have all graduations. So,
Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Lown?
Yeah, really happy to know that you're listening about, you know, let's not replace stuff just because it's at the manufacturer's suggested obsolescence. And keeping the more expensive stuff there was really a good idea. The center part there is, you know, the panels are kind of shabby. If we had to, they could live another couple of years, right? But the one in the back over here where B is still in pretty good shape. So, you know, if we were gonna try to squeeze dollars for another 5 years, you know, it'd probably live. But it's a good step that we're, at least infrastructure-wise, keeping it there. The fence is actually still, it's kind of ugly because it's leaning, but it's sturdy. It's not gonna fall over next week. And just having, you know, looked through there. Renovating benches, it looks like your plan is primarily to renovate them. But then there's an alternative bid of replacing benches. How do you make that decision? Is it on price? Because, you know, I think wood looks better than plastic anyway.
Right.
Although I know it could last for 100 years if it's plastic. But how do you make that choice?
It's just basically based on the prices that come back from the contractors and what we're gonna do. I would say most likely they're gonna be just replaced like with the wood that's currently out there now. So,
Some of it could just be sand and paint.
right. No, and that's also another option as well. So, those pieces of the furniture that have wood that is still in good condition will just be refurbished. Those pieces that need to be replaced then will be replaced. So.
Okay.
And the benches and tables and chairs are original to the park. You couldn't find them anymore like they are there. So
That's good.
we would like to, historically, I guess, keep that furniture there. We've just basically fixed them, again, which is an economic way to do it without having to replace all the structure that's basically there, the concrete footings that are all on the ground. That items can basically stay in place.
There's one very odd section near the trellis area that looks like something was there and was taken away. It's just an empty square.
Oh, that sits in here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it looks like a mistake.
right. Well, it was proposed, and at one time it had planting basically in that area. It is an odd area that doesn't have irrigation to it now, so we are proposing just to pave over it to maintain a larger basic patio area and remove that void that's there.
I was thinking maybe some little kids' bike racks in there for when they come over there. It's a little bit more secure, they can see their bikes instead of
No, that's
having to be out on the street.
At number 13 are you talking about, or?
I'm not sure it's marked.
No, I don't think we actually call that area out on the plan.
It's right here,
specifically.
just to the right on our.
Oh, just right over there.
Of the,
That shadowy area there.
just to the right of the, I marked it off, just to the right of the trellis.
Yeah.
Right.
there.
What's to the left of the trellis there?
Sandbox.
Sandbox that stays.
13?
Yeah, there's the sandbox area that's going to remain basically the sand in
Okay.
that area. So.
Wasn't that a merry-go-round at one point? Isn't there some?
I'm not quite sure. I think it's always just been the sandbox area.
I thought that was where it was. It's like right in the middle.
And that's a great solution on that podocarpus to put up the second retaining wall there, so you're not
Right.
disturbing it. It works really well in that area, I think. Oh, the drinking fountains. Of course, it's already leaking terribly, so hurry on that piece. There's a drought. I think that was all my comments.
I would just add, again, I would go keep the sand, as you know, I would say that. But in particular, I don't see any reason to give up the sand for wood bark, which doesn't increase accessibility. It doesn't really do anything except make it less messy. So I think we should keep the sand. But I'm really happy that you're keeping all the old furniture and the telephone pole chairs and that kind of thing, because then, just like we were saying earlier, you don't want every single park to look exactly the same. And this park is one of my favorite parks. I think it's very unique and it has a special character to it. So I think that's great.
Just one point of clarification. I know how strongly the commission loves sand, and I respect that. We're always looking, we specifically, when we first scoped this out, we said at all costs we're saving the sandbox. And Peter said, yes, I get it. But the 5R that Peter's suggesting go in place of the sand in the playground is accessible. Wheelchairs can go on. It's an accessible product. The sand is not, meaning you cannot take a wheelchair through that, but you can on the 5R. So when we just had our meeting on the Magical Bridge yesterday, and Joe Smitty and the rest of the people are saying, well, you don't have enough accessibility in your parks. This is something you should push for. This is one of those endeavors that kind of pushes us in that direction, though I fully respect your opinions and desire to maintain sand where possible. But that's where and why staff has made that recommendation.
So do half and half.
Well, that's what we tried to meet in retaining a sandbox, and that's the
It's
same
a big
thing
sandbox.
we tried to do.
It is a big sandbox. But one of the things about the sand is sand under swings lets you swing and drag your feet through the sand, and there's no other way you can do that. So maybe there's some compromise to be able to provide accessibility to the bulk of that playground even. I think there are a number of swings, even if you just kept one section or one swing that has a sand experience. For every park, I think that's a useful thing to keep in mind. But I did not realize that the bark, that the mulch, that the rubberized stuff was accessible. It didn't sound like
It's
it.
not rubberized, it's wooden, it's
Oh,
a
okay.
very clean and specifically designed
It's
wood
engineered.
mulch. It's got like it's engineered, so
It's
it's
called
all like
5R.
specific same size, and it's made from a particular product that doesn't splinter, so. And yes, even, it is definitely considered and is seen by ADA as being accessible. It's, you can get a wheelchair out there. It's not the easiest thing. It's not like the rubber or paving.
Right.
But it's definitely a lot easier than getting out there. So it allows you a little bit more movability than the sand does. Once you're out in the sand, then you're kind of stuck out there. So.
Any other questions, Tom?
The sandbox, I'm glad it's staying. It'd be really nice if there's some type of drinking fountain with a faucet nearby so they can take the water, because sand by itself when it's dry is not nearly as good as wet sand. So make it convenient. The problem is you put a faucet right in there, they turn on and the whole thing floods. But if they have to do it bucket by bucket, that kind of regulates it so it doesn't get flooded, but yet they still can get some wet sand and make sand castles.
And we can look at the option of the new drinking fountain having, which is in this location over here. So you would have to carry it a little ways, but you could get yourself some water that could have a spigot to it. So it wasn't you filling it up in a drinking fountain. But you're actually
Having a
turning it on.
Johnson faucet or something like that would be one way of doing it. One thing about this park is on the left side there, it's really underutilized, it seems. If you go there, the playground equipment is all on the right side of the playground, and it's all very heavily used, and then you have this dead space to the left. And is there something that we could do on that left side? Now, the center part, there's some redwoods, so you can't really do much.
What do you mean on the left side?
You mean this over here area?
The left side on the playground.
Oh, of the play, and here you
Behind the
mean?
redwoods there. So the redwoods in the center, they're a nice touch, but on that left side, I don't remember exactly what's between the redwoods and the street. But
Well, it's the paving basically in this section here, and then the fencing gets out here, and it's just, really, it's mostly ground cover ivy is what is out in this planting area now.
Is there some ways to put a picnic table or something there where it might get some use? Because right now it's...
Well, that's what we did down in this area right here, is proposing to have 2 new picnic tables in that area. We could, look at this area as well and propose something in that space. But yeah, there's not a lot of usable area over there to actually put something, especially play equipment, which usually requires bigger fall zone, and it's kind of a tight space in that area.
Yeah,
So-
even if it's not play equipment, if there's some other type of functionality you can add.
We can.
It is a nice shaded spot, so
Right.
I think there's some benches there, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's a nice, well, there's one that sits right here, and then a few benches that sit in here, but we could definitely look along this edge as well.
Could
I mean,
there
it
be a
is a beautiful
playhouse?
redwood stand that's in there.
Could you do a playhouse in that area?
That's
For
something you could definitely
creative
look at.
play?
Sure.
I suspect that since there's no bathroom in that park, that's probably what the Ivy's used for.
And further up, if you go from there and right in that area to the right, just to the right of it, there's a little square.
Right.
That's just planting right now? Is ivy again, or what is that?
This area now is it's just dirt basically underneath the existing tree. What we were proposing there would just be to mulch under the tree, so it was just the ground cover was, or the ground there was protected more, to hold more moisture for the tree there. We weren't really going to develop that space at all.
I mean, is that someplace you can put a playhouse or something different?
This would be actually not a, that would be more connected to the play area, to put a basically a playhouse or some small structure in it. We could definitely, that would be a good place to put it.
So anyway, I would put some thought into that whole left side and see if there's any added functionality we can get out of that.
Sure.
That's it, thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 4, King Hall City Hall Improvement Project, review maintenance and improvement closet. I think we have Peter again for this.
Let's see.
Are we using voice commands for that?
Oh, no.
Oh, I thought you were bringing the screen down.
Just a login, you have to log into this. You can control that for me and I'll sit here and talk about it. All right, I think we're ready to go. Commissioners, good evening again. Peter Jensen, landscape architect from the city of Palo Alto. We're going to talk about an improvement project for King Plaza, which is the plaza that exists in front of City Hall. We also review a few things around the perimeter that are going to be add services to that, so we can talk about this. So currently now, the original budget for the King Plaza improvements were $125,000 basically was the budget. I've started to use some of that budget though already. We used some of that budget to do the native landscape planting on the side planter, the native planting. We also used some of that budget to redo the planting in the circle around Aurora. So basically we have now a less amount than that $125,000. And what we're going to try, and you can go to the next slide. What we're going to look on it, and try to focus on is replacing some of the turf, especially the turf that's along Hamilton out in the front, and switching that over to a more sustainable, less water-thirsty landscape out there. We want to look at the decomposed granite areas underneath the magnolia trees, which need to be renovated. Very similar to Bowden Park, they've started to lose their header board. Some of the surfacing in there isn't as level or as even as it could be. We want to fix basically those items. We'd also like to address the lighting in the plaza as well. Currently now, there has been installed some Twinkie lights up in the trees. Due to the power source though that supplies power to those Twinkie lights, you'll see that unlike University Avenue, where the lights on the trees are impactful and they go from the trunk all the way up, that it's very minimal out there because basically what's out there right now is as much of the circuit can hold. So what we'd like to propose is actually using the existing light poles that are out there and installing basically a light that will basically cast up into the magnolia trees, which are heavy, dense trees. And then what will happen, especially in the magnolia trees, is the majority of that light then will reflect down off the leaves and then back down underneath the trees and illuminate the plaza a lot more than it is now. If you walk out there now, those areas underneath the magnolia trees are kind of the dark area that they're not too inviting out of a space, especially at night, to be in. It will also then eliminate the maintenance as it goes along with the Twinkie lights. Currently now, most of the lights that are in the trees are wrapped around the magnolia. As it grows, thins itself out, and it basically dies from the bottom up. So the branches, the majority of them that the lights are strung around are actually dead branches, and they can't really be removed because they're surrounded by the lights. So that's another area that we want to look at doing. We looked at the actual full perimeter around City Hall, which has the mixtures of flax, which is more of a grass plant, and ground cover ivy. And replacing that ground cover ivy with another type of plant material. Just from the budget that we started to put together, we're going to have that as an ad service in the plan, but I'm pretty sure that we do not have the budget to actually do with that perimeter landscape. So we're going to leave it in the plan and see what our budget numbers come out to be, but that's something that probably we're not going to get to. And then there are other planters like the one that we did the drought tolerant planting on the one side. There's two back by the council chambers on either side, and then the one that's very similar to the one that's along, that's on the other side of the building from the native garden. Those are, we just like to clean those up and make them a little bit more pretty than what they are looking like now. Remove some of the plant material there that, again, that's not, that takes a lot of maintenance or is really not drought tolerant at all, and do things in those planters as well. So next slide. So then basically then here are the areas that we're talking about. So the areas that, and again, from what I've seen of the budget and I know how much money we have, we're basically going to focus on the two planters basically in front along Hamilton, focusing on the DG and repairing those things, looking at the light fixtures that are in this spot, replanting these planters at the entryway, because they do have a lot of impact for people pulling into there. It's kind of the first thing you see going into City Hall. And then, as I said, the bid alternate items would be to start discussing on looking at another ground cover here and removing the ivy, and then looking at these basically planters of how we can clean them up and just make them look a little bit prettier than they are right now without doing too much there. It is of note to say that City Hall is basically a green roof, is what you're looking at there. So it's all built on parking deck. The planters, and even the ones with the giant magnolias in them, are 3 to 3.5 feet deep. So they're not very deep, even though the trees have grown a lot larger than I would have ever expected them that they did. But what happens though with a green roof over time, and which will happen with this green roof, is that it'll need to be renovated. That renovation is going to happen sometime in the next 10 or 15 years. And basically what that means as far as renovation goes is that most of that material that's out there goes away. So really the only way to start to renovate the green roof is to get back down in the planters again and start to re-waterproof them again,
bring new soil into again, and basically start over here again. So I don't want to start proposing that we plant a lot of new trees out there that would get to the size of the time when this is going to be renovated that we're going to have to be taken out. That's going to be a bigger scale project for someday. We can talk about how that can all be put together one day and how this could be a much more sustainable and much more inviting place to be. But for our purposes now, we basically want to make it as sustainable as we can make it now, as reduce the maintenance as we can now for the budget base that we have. The other aspect of this project that actually Darren's helping us out with funding from another CIP is to bring in new furnishing, site furnishing to King Plaza. So if you've been in King Plaza, you'll notice that most of the benches, especially the benches that are there, are definitely older benches. Most of them aren't comfortable to sit on, or they're deteriorating in some way. So we're basically proposing, together you can go to this one. So we're basically proposing then bringing in new benches, trash cans, and a few more tables than what we have out there now. Again, just to make the space more usable, more friendly to visitors or employees of the downtown or City Hall to basically use that space as a gathering space now. I think we've been very successful with the tables that we brought in a few years ago. They seem to be very highly used. So we basically just want to add more to them. So there's other opportunities basically for the community to use King Plaza as more of an outdoor park or seating area than it is used now. And you can go back one slide and we can talk a little bit more about this. This is then a proposal of the planting basically in the front planter, and what we're showing here is basically this planter. And if you do happen to walk by there, you'll notice that again the trees are growing in a very limited planting area. They have heavy root systems right on the surface of the planting area. So what we would propose, and you can see these big circles basically are where the trees are, and the amount of space that just their root on the ground takes up will be void of planting. We would like to remove the turf that's basically there. Right now there's agapanthus and boxwood hedge that is from another era that can go basically away out there, and we can start to bring in more contemporary plants that would go along with the style. Again, that would be much more drought tolerant, less maintenance to go along there, and giving this to kind of harken back to basically what was done in the circular planter, bring in some native grasses and some other plants that are drought tolerant, not native, like kangaroo paw, to basically act as the street frontage curb appeal basically to City Hall, and add a little bit more diversity and more of aesthetic value basically to that. This starts to show some of the planting that we've been kicking around of what would be good around City Hall. Like I said, I don't think we're going to have enough money to do that, but we've started to talk about myopterum and arctostaphylos and juniper. Basically, there is no plant, I would say, that we would rule out. That is a tough area down there. Really, the ivy, despite it being an area, and what they're having problems with is the rodents, basically, in the ivy. If it didn't have that rodent problem, the ivy would definitely be the best thing for that slope. It's tough, it lives long, you can cut it down all day long and it will always come back. So, but unfortunately it does have a rodent issue. So I think it's something that we will keep focusing on and looking at and trying to get money for, to do that around the perimeter of City Hall. I'm fairly doubtful that we're going to get that in this capital improvement with the funds that we have. So that's basically kind of our plan for a King Plaza. Do you have any questions?
I like the idea, but what I don't like, it's like you've paved down that and now you're cutting into it to pull up the infrastructure and replace the pipes. I just wish we could either move up the redo of the roof, and so we're not doing it twice, because to me that's just a huge waste of money. But I don't know how you could manage to do that with the way we have the budget structure set up right now. So
Well, currently there is not a capital improvement project for redoing the deck out there. And that is because the amount of money that it's going to take to redo that deck is a large amount. A multi-million-dollar amount. So in that stopgap time, I think that, plant material really doesn't live forever. So even the 10 to 15 years that this plant material will be out there, that would be basically its lifespan. So I'm comfortable with planting new plants out there and not thinking about that we're just wasting the money out there. I think that we're going to get a lot back as far as the reduction of water use, the reduction of carbon dioxide created by mowing the lawn continuously. I think all those things are a positive thing. And we're going to basically spend about $50,000 is basically what we're going to spend out there. So it may seem like a large amount of money, but when you start talking about these other projects, you know that $50,000 goes away very quickly.
And I agree with you on that point. It's just, I wish there was a better way.
Right. I totally agree with you as well. But it is.
Staff debated that one extensively.
Right.
At the same time, this is the face of the city.
I know.
Of all our sites that we're going to landscape, this is the one we want to look the best. So it was a compromise. We tried to do our best to straddle that very situation. It's a tough one.
And we did focus on the visible planters on Hamilton in this time of drought that we are in. City staff, we believe that it's a good showing on our part that we are doing our part to say that that grass out there is not the most sustainable thing. We can reduce water by a good amount if we replace it with. It's just, I think it's a good example of what can be done to a landscape to convert it to save water that is poignant right now that people then can go by and look at immediately and say, we're doing something. There's a good example of what we can do with our landscape as well. So I think it's a good time to do that frontage out there.
Any other questions or comments?
My general impression is that the plaza just isn't very inviting. Maybe like during lunch, is it packed people downtown? I was not here during the day.
Definitely the tables that are out there are used. That's why I'd like to get more furniture out there and more tables out there to get more people out there. I think, building that type of momentum that people are out there using it usually draws in more people to use it. Before there wasn't really a lot of tables or chairs out there for people to use, and definitely it was a more stark place that was not used at all. So I think for our purposes, the furniture is a big thing to supply a relaxing setting, and definitely the areas underneath the oak or the magnolia trees, definitely on warm summer days, it is kind of a beautiful place to sit. It's very cool there. Definitely the plaza gets its share of wind, and I think it creates a draft in the south, just the building does. But it is comfortable to sit out there when it is warm outside. So I think the furniture will help that out a lot.
It just seems like a wasted opportunity. You have a half block, granted a lot of it's paved, but I mean it's a plaza, and I don't see the use that I would think that for all the people that work downtown and all the people who work right next door in the building, I would think that this would be a very heavily used park, and I don't see that use.
Along those lines, have food carts ever come in during lunch there? Is a farmer's market back that used to be set up there?
Well, there's the farmer's market on the weekend that is very close to this place. Food carts and food trucks are difficult in an area that's already kind of zoned for commercial and restaurants. If it's not a particular vendor that's already in downtown, those restaurants that are there have a difficult time accepting that you're going to allow something else to come in to take away from their business. So there's conversations that we could have further with downtown businesses that already exist to see if they wanted to have something basically in there. Really the Cuba Cafe is really the one that's been like more proactive in having stuff like there, but in this location it's very close to where their storefront is. So
The city hall has a cafeteria too, that people just go downstairs, get their food, and go back to their desk. They
Yeah.
might not even go outside.
It's a tiny cafe.
Yeah, I think the addition of tables and chairs and nicer benches will definitely attract people. I mean, I know I've been downtown and was desperate to sit down and wolf down my lunch somewhere, and I didn't have a place. So I think that is a very inviting, natural spot for people to congregate. A lot of people have outdoor impromptu little meetings, 2 or 3 people, and having a place to sit at a little table where you can put your stuff down would be wonderful.
Well, we'd also like to work closely with the Art Commission as well, to maintain some type of focal feature in the plaza itself. So right now there's a massive one that's there with Aurora. It definitely creates traffic in the plaza, which I think is a positive for it. I'm working with basically the Art Commission to try to make sure that when Aurora goes away, that we do have something that goes back into that location, which I think is another good thing that's inviting to the plaza. You know, the center where Aurora is now was at one time a fountain, and it met the fate of basically what all fountains become. They become planters. So, you know, I think that it was a good start, and having something there like Aurora that is a significant art piece that does attract people to come to the plaza that maybe would not come there is another way to make it more inviting.
Well, the wine bottle structure prior to that was fantastic, and then you also had the little house. That was wonderful. So I don't think they're so proactive in the city with that would be
Right, and this, you know, it's best locations to have such things like that. So.
And just lastly, I would like to provide another presentation so you can say twinkle up or
Twinkie lights, Twinkie lights.
more.
You can always call them Christmas lights too.
Yeah.
Okay,
Any other questions?
I think that's it. Thank you very much. Next to item 5, planning discussion. Planning discussion for the Commission Council study session, August 11th. And this is a discussion to figure out. For that, Ed and I talked some about what we should do, just the that we've traditionally done, or if we should do something new. Because we've got the master plan process ongoing and so much is tied to that, and we don't have that. So another possibility, so it's not clear we could present our, we're going to have recommendations from any of the ad hocs by August 11th. So that's sort of a challenge. What can we do about that they're going to be interested in, that we would like feedback from them? Another option is possibly not doing a joint session in the old style, but making the MIG presentation to council in September. Maybe that could be a joint session between commission and council on the master plan. Those are just some ideas. What do y'all think?
Why are we doing this in August? I mean, we just did one.
It feels like we just did one.
We did. So I don't know why we're doing
in
this.
May. This was the latest they could give us. We could cancel it.
I like the idea of the
Push
joint
it out until
session.
January.
Well, I was just going to say that I think that's tricky because the MIG people have so much, I mean, he was on a roll for a little over an hour with us, and I think that a lot of what we're talking about on September 8th, we will have already read them, the laundry list of things.
What is the shutdown date from?
We don't
End
know.
of summer. End of summer, yeah.
And would that be a lot session to get the results saying, we've, city, and these are the items that people.
Well, I think that's what they're hoping to council in September.
Right, but also or intercept and integrate it in together. The trick research is if you thing, and if you don't have all the research pieces, they're just going to remember what you. So it has to be very succinctly, and then packaged, and then presented.
I understand that. What would happen if we went ahead in August, we know MIG won't be presented in September? Could we issues to make council more ready to hear the presentation?
There's
Yeah,
nothing
yeah,
with
yeah.
it.
It sounds like this, I think it'd be counterproductive.
Right.
So would it make sense to give an update things that were raised last time, like Sterling Canal and that kind of thing?
To report. The park, we could report on the dedication as park hopefully is moving, we can talk about later tonight. But not going to be complete before August 11th. Not complete by August 11th.
I say we cancel it.
Just push to early in
Try to
January.
get it in the.
Even though they told, yeah, I think we should just say this doesn't work it doesn't coordinate with our own schedules of when we're
Particularly the
completing our
master
work.
plan.
Right.
The master
I
plan
think
is
you
more
should add
productive if we come in later.
it's counterproductive. It's a waste of their time because it would just be a very broad stroke kind of conversation with generalizations, whereas if we come in January, things are going to be way more specific at that point. They will have had more exposure because they will have been presented. The MIG.
Yeah. Does that sound right to everybody? Try to push it off till January or February?
Yeah, if we truly don't, so now I'm back to the idea of the joint study session, but you think it's not going, if the group, if we thought there was any utility of that, I think it could be really good. If we could add something, but you're saying that it seems like the general thought is that we will only detract by taking up time away from MIG. Is that the feeling?
Well, I don't think we can hijack their meeting.
No,
So
we
the
want
question
to.
is, we don't want to interfere with whatever presentation they're going to make. The question, I guess, is whether we want to participate in giving them feedback based on their presentation. But we had an opportunity to do that tonight. We don't know what new they're going to have in September. I'm just thinking of the last time when we had that awkward joint session with about the master plan. If it would be like that, I don't see a point in doing it together.
No.
So the only reason to do it together is if you have specific thoughts about how you want to interact. And it's always a dilemma then with seven of us, 9 of them, how to work the time.
I guess maybe thinking of it backwards from a productivity perspective, what would you want them to walk away with?
Right.
So if we don't have specific points, or we don't have an action plan of, these are the 3 to 5 points that we want them to walk away with, or give us guidance, or have them help us with these specific issues, if we don't have that expectation of things that we're looking for, then it's not productive for them to sit with us. That they could be doing something else, but in January, after the whole process is kind of folding down, and there's more action plan.
I just wonder, because of their reaction of being like left out of the master plan process so far, that at the August 11th, we would have had 1 stakeholder and 2 intercepts. You know, it's almost a halfway point, and we could say this is a sanity check on how it's going, give them a chance to share opinions with us. We wouldn't have to present much give them a chance to talk to us. about any questions or concerns they have about the halfway process.
Isn't council supposed to see it by September anyway? So
Yeah, September 8th.
We'd only be 3
MIG goes
weeks in
in.
advance
Yeah,
of that.
that doesn't make sense.
And we're not going to necessarily have to be given those results specifically from them, right? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I mean, other than
piecemeal
the,
research.
right, that's
Well,
just a status check.
I like what Stacy's saying because in September, we are going, in that month, through our ad hoc committees, we will be working with MIG. And we will be influencing, in some ways, their presentation by, I don't know, I just feel like there will be some kind of interchange between our commission and MIG in the month of September. And if we've had a meeting with council in August, then we are armed with more insight into how council's looking at it.
But what, we don't have, what insight can they provide us when they don't know what's going on?
We would have to give a presentation, we would have to give a summary of where we think things stand.
Well, they're getting one in three
But we don't
weeks
know
after.
that. I mean, right, MIG is the one collecting,
Right, it would be
We're sitting
impressions rather than data. It could be a halfway point sanity check if, you know, if they are curious what we're up to and what our impressions are so far, such as if they, I mean, it seems like a shame to waste the opportunity.
I'm just saying, if we're doing our work that we've laid out, we will have gone to at least one stakeholder meeting, many intercept meetings, and even a community outreach meeting by then. If we go back to this calendar.
Yeah, not the community,
Oh, that one.
just two internships and a stakeholder, at least two.
September 8th, right. We
Yeah.
have to
So-
pick the-
And we won't have the feedback
Schedule is
from
trying to
the
drive
research.
content as opposed to content driving schedule. That we're saying,
Yeah.
what can find something they'd be interested in.
I can't possibly imagine they would complain about having a meeting canceled on them.
Postpone.
And really, we're just moving it forward to the
Yeah.
beginning of the year instead of the
Other than-
middle of the year.
Other than that, it's involvement in this joint effort on an ongoing process. I mean,
Can you run it by Greg Schmidt?
Yeah.
After we discuss?
Yeah, I can touch base with Greg and with Darren or Rob. Are you stepping in for a,
Yeah, I'm
or
filling in
you're
for
a guy
Rob,
for the next
yeah.
indefinite time?
Right.
So maybe we can talk on the
Sure.
phone and I'll try to check in with Greg also. And
I think that makes sense.
we'll look into whether they think it's useful to have or not. We can talk about it again next month.
And we could also consult with Ryan a little bit on his thoughts too, if that's
Okay.
helpful.
And you were saying, don't you have to also find out if they'll let us transfer it to January? Is that an unknown at this point?
That is an unknown.
Because I think some of it hinges on whether we can do that.
Well, we might not be able to do it in January. I'm sure that they would let us not do it in August and reschedule sometime in the future. The
We
when
still know
in the
when.
future is the big question mark based on our schedule. Okay, so we'll run around and sort that out.
It just seems, I think the council likes the idea of having interaction with us on a regular basis. And we're trying to put a square peg into a round hole and saying, how can we have some way of having interaction? Is there some other way of having interaction apart from having this 1 hour meeting where we go through and present? I don't know, do we, for
Well,
example,
last year we specifically presented some new initiatives, but as you just said, we're not far enough along on those initiatives to kind of report a whole lot of progress. So we can't kind of go back to that and
but instead of having a 1 hour meeting twice a year, do we go to council every 3 months for 20 minutes and say, these are the hot issues that we're dealing with?
no, that's not the format. That's not the protocol.
It's pretty standardized.
Yeah, it's different.
All commissions are this way, so.
Oh.
But, so we were before them in
But-
March, right? February or March? Was it that, or when did we see them last?
It was something like
What
that.
is this?
This is
It's really
late.
late.
So usually it's a once a year. This year, it seems like they're squeezing our 2 years' worth into 1 year. But it
We
seems to
waited
me
a long time
by,
last time. I think it was a long delay, is my memory.
yeah. But by the end of this year, we very well might have something to report from the initiatives that we talked about
Right.
with them last time. So
And
that
and
should
the
be
national
logical.
plan.
Yeah.
Right, which is really that's the big fish, right? That's,
Because, if we go in front of council, somebody's going to say, what are you doing with the 7.7 acres?
exactly.
And they say, well, what are we doing with dog parks? And we're doing it, but we don't know what we're doing with
Yeah, we're not there.
It's just the timing is off.
Exactly.
And that's another awkward conversation. We still don't have an answer.
Right.
Okay.
I don't
so
want
then-
another awkward meeting. I want to go in there clarity.
I like productivity,
Yeah.
so if you have something specific to say, then you, but just to go in there with a bunch of fluff and hypotheticals is a waste of their time, and it's
Waste our
a
time.
waste of our time too.
All right, let's move on to number 6, golf course reconstruction project update. Do you have an update on that? Okay. So we'll defer that to next month.
We don't have any insight right now.
The insight that they went to council on Monday and that they approved everything Scott brought forward, which was an 8-point list of approving contracts and moving forward, and that we're still hung up on the water board permit. So kind of same as we were with that endeavor, the permit remains a struggle and we're just not there yet. We're continuing to put pressure on the water board, express the challenges that impacts the city financially and puts the project in jeopardy. And you miss certain windows and it puts you in trouble establishing a turf at all and maybe throws us out every year. There's all sorts of things that are up in the air. We're still working very, very hard to put that pressure on the water board to get that permit done. But we did make a step forward with the council on Monday with those contract approvals to set up that construction permit, construction contract. Yeah.
And we did get the budget approved to continue operations in the interim.
Yes. Yeah.
What about Rich Gordon and Jerry Hill? Have we been banging on them to get them to bang for us?
I'm not involved in the discussion. I know that Jim King is working behind the scenes quite a bit with different politicians to try to make things happen.
Well, one of those has been involved, I don't recall which one, but.
Okay. I mean, it just seems silly that if there's nothing about our design that they don't like, it's just that it seems purely political.
Yes, as I understand it, it's the connectivity with the other one that if we move forward with ours, their fear is that it precludes certain options that they'd like to have considered with the JPA project.
All right, next item is other ad hoc committee and liaison updates. And the only one that I'm aware of that has an update is the CIP ad hoc.
Yeah, Keith and I met, and just before that, I talked with Greg about getting started as we planned last year, to get started even earlier this year on the CIP process. And that was exactly what Greg and Darren wanted to do as well. So we've got our first meeting scheduled for July 14th, I believe it is. And last year we started on October 23rd. And last year on October 23rd was earlier than the previous year. So I think we're getting we're getting aligned here.
That's great.
Right. So definitely looking forward to getting going on that. As we were last year, the ad hoc committee and I think the commission was completely aligned with staff on the priorities. Unfortunately, none of the priorities got approved. And my understanding on the reason for that is none of the new hotel tax was going to be allocated to any parks projects particularly. And then there was also actually a shortfall in the budget. So at this point, going into the new set of meetings with Keith and I are still the ad hoc. We're kind of assuming that those same high priorities are there. But one of the things we want to look at as an ad hoc and then eventually here is that, are there any good reasons why some other things should be moved up for, what Keith and I call privately real criteria, not just, that park that's a block from me would look really good if it was renovated now as opposed to 10 years from now when it's scheduled. So when we get to that, we'll have to just kind of look at what some of the other options are. And then we'll have time this year, basically, for the whole commission to look at those priorities before it's settled. I don't think we have budget guidelines yet, do we?
No, we don't.
Right. So we don't know what the pot's going to be, and as always, everyone in the city is looking for, a piece of that. You want to?
I think that's good enough. There's going to be a lot of competition for money, and we don't know how big the pot. If there's a big pot, we might be able to do it. The Blue Ribbon Infrastructure Commission had all this catch-up work, and they not only didn't do the catch-up work, they didn't do the regular work last year, so we fell further behind. So it's going to be a long list this year.
But just the things that we did prioritize last year with community garden irrigation, which is likely still to be on there. The Buckeye Creek study because of the study for the hydrological problems up there. Bulware Park golf parking lot, the Foothills Fire Management Plan, Baylands Comprehensive Plan, and then Greer Park Dog Exercise Area. So going into it, those will be the first things we look at, but not the only things by far. That's it, Chair.
Thank you. Any other updates from ad hoc? Nothing. Then comments and announcements. Do you have any comments and announcements, Jared? No. Okay, I'll just mention, Chili Cook-Off is July 4th. The Magical Bridge Playground had its groundbreaking ceremony yesterday, I think, yesterday was your day. It was extremely well attended, and there was a lot of enthusiastic support for it. People are really excited. So moving forward.
3 commissioners and a lot of politicians, and it was just a very warming experience, and everybody, including I've never heard a builder so excited about a building project. That was wonderful to see the guy who's going to actually put this together with that sort of literally emotionally involved in the project. It was really heartwarming.
And Ada's Cafe was there passing out goodies, and it sounds like they've worked out an arrangement where they're also going to bring food carts through the playground once it's up and running and operational on a regular schedule. So there will be a food service access. Any other announcements, comments? Okay. Tentative agenda for July 22nd meeting.
Are these 2 parks going to come back?
Are they?
We hope to have PIOs come back for those.
Okay.
Somewhat depends on the turnaround time from the attorney's office, but I'll be working with Peter to try to bring those, both the King Plaza and the
I think also something we'd like to see, Darren, is have a briefing on the new comp plan process and what our involvement is that and what the timeline is and how to get moving on it, because I think it's moving already and we're not on the bus.
Okay.
And we can remind you, Darren, last time we sat in on the NEE, the natural environment element.
With Stephen Turner.
Yes, that's Stephen Turner.
And we also had an ad hoc that worked on the community services
Yes.
element.
Yes.
Might we have an update from the 7.7 acres at Foothill ad hoc on a timeline for stakeholders and community meetings?
I've gotten my agenda to schedule a meeting for the ad hoc committee, and hopefully we can get that going real quick, and then we have some update for that July meeting, I hope. Do you guys have time yet?
When is it going to be approved by council?
It's not ready for that because we're still in the survey. I'm sorry, I should not put that up in the comments or the ad hoc update was that the survey work's nearly complete. The only work left to remain to complete is the writing in of easements on the map. So the surveyors mapped everything. It looked as though there were a few areas of encroachment, that is Mr. Area's property encroached upon city land in a few areas. But by and large, the majority of the encroachment turns out to have been easements. So we're having the map itself, having those easements drawn in so we can exactly see how much land we're talking about and measure it out. And then that will have to be addressed before the ordinance can go through. So these little encroachment areas will have to be ironed out. I'll be meeting with Greg Betts and we'll kind of hack through the next steps.
So this encroachment area that's been using the land and now he has an easement on it? Or?
No, part of it, before his lease, he had an easement, and it looked as though, when we first saw the map, that there was extensive encroachment. After we reconciled the map with some of the easements that had been granted to him in the past, it showed that there weren't actually encroachments. The fence line he put was in fact right at the easement line. So the majority of it is exactly where it should be. However, there are a few edges to the park where it appears that by our surveyor.
And what's the aspect of it that
Mr. Yard going back some time to the property? There was some sort of exchange privy to all the details, and that was the main exchange. We'll give you this easement, and in turn, we retain in perpetuity.
You can use some of yours, there's a swap.
Maybe an assessment of whether he damaged any of the land by how he stored items or he dealt with the creek of that?
They'll be going through of all the easements to call responsible for, because as you know, he rented that land for a number of years, the majority of the 7.7, and so we'll pour through to see if there was any replace in kind or it has to be put back as such. I didn't find anything to begin my beginning searches, so we'll have to go through that more carefully. Waiting to see how everything shapes before we get into too much into the woods with that, but it should be very shortly.
Okay, so you might have just a short update, and more likely August you'd have
Out all those issues by August.
and I want to have a discussion item next month. Any other ad hocs?
Yeah. Plan.
Yeah.
And
Great.
talk to Claudia and give an update on that.
Great.
I think that we'll try to report back on the community gardens. We want to schedule a meeting with you, Darren. We presented last month that you weren't able to attend.
Yeah.
So after Stacy and I are going to try to schedule a
Okay,
meeting
that sounds great.
with you.
So you want to let me know if you want a discussion item after you've met?
Yes.
Okay, great. And dogs, we're not going to be ready to present anything in July, but we'll go on plan for August. And maybe website we can update in July with a short update. Anything else? Oh, and it'd be great to hear from the master plan ad hocs. A brief update on the stakeholder meetings and the survey, since you are all ramping up now to do that.
I have a question on the stakeholders meeting. I know we have 2 commissioners on the ad hoc. I know, are you planning on attending?
And
Stacy, can others of us, is it a public meeting?
Is the stakeholder meeting a public meeting, Darren?
No, it would just be.
No, that's the community meeting.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so we can't.
Can we send a third?
You can, you just can't get to 4.
Right, exactly. So I'd like to go unless there's another one, just because there's one open spot. Did anyone else here want to go?
I'm more geared towards the community ones, so.
Okay. So we shouldn't have any conflict.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. What's the status of El Camino Park?
Can we finish with the agenda first? Is
Okay,
there
yep.
anything else for the agenda for next month that anybody has on mind? Oh. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. El Camino Park. It looks like it's ready to become a park. Are we waiting for something else? Or?
Yes, we're waiting for finalizing the plans. I reviewed the 90% plans this morning. There's a few other people it has to be routed to. Electric ops, for example, needs to make sure that lighting plan at 90% is right. So a few more.
Utility work is totally done, though.
Pardon?
The utility work and for the reservoir is totally done.
Yes.
And so,
Station's done.
what?
Yeah.
And so now all we're waiting on is just our own process.
Right.
Okay.
And we're almost there. We're at 90%. We should be wrapping it up quickly.
Do you have a guess when you'll break ground?
I do have an updated map that I can send to you. I can email you, I'm sorry, not map, agenda and timing for it, so I'll email that to you guys.
That'd be great, thank you.
And how about Scott Park? When do we get bocce?
Practicing?
Yes. It hasn't started construction yet.
No, it hasn't. The plans just got finalized. And I know that seems like a strange thing because we had plans, we revised the entire park, and we had a schematic that Peter put together. Those are not construction drawings. So to take the drawings like this that Peter had put together and turn them into CVs took a long time. It's now completed. I just finished the review of that last week. So we're just about ready to go. The funding is a little bit of a challenge. We had hoped to use one CIP that had been defunded last year. It was actually 2 years ago. It was a power pole located in the old Pasco site near Baylands Athletic Center. And that was to go away. We wanted to move that pole and put a soccer field there. Soccer field won't fit. And we didn't know what the next step would be. We didn't know how we're going to use it. The golf course thing was still up in the air. So they canceled that CIP. I hoped to use the funding for that to fill the void, this excess overspill that we are now incurring with Scott. And I was told, unfortunately, that's not an option. They use that money elsewhere. So we're going to do some fancy footwork with some other CIPs, benches, signs, and fences, a few others. We'll pull a little bit here and there to make up the difference and get Scott Park done. So long story made short, we should be able to go with purchasing with this in 2 weeks. They'll go out to bid, and then the bidding process is somewhere around 6. We'll get a contractor on board, and then the construction schedule will go from there. And for the rough guess, we'll be looking at like two months to get it wrapped up, is my rough estimate. And I can send a schedule once I have that.
2 months from now or 2 months after the?
2 months after the contractor's on board.
Okay, so we're talking like 4 or 5 months up?
Probably.
Okay.
So maybe we should add it to the CIP's
Oh.
priorities.
Well, that one's funded and we're going to make it happen.
Okay.
So that one's need to go on your list. So
Okay,
it'll be
great.
done.
And when is Monroe Park going to start? Is it ready to go out to bid?
I have to check with Peter on that one.
I'd love to see some extra money go towards that backstop at Alto Park. Keep
Extra
getting
money
questions
is
about
the
that.
challenge. There's not a lot of extra money.
I know.
All right, I would be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn, if anyone is so inclined.
A so motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.